1. Backstory. I used to work a temporary job at a fish hatchery in the middle of nowhere, southeast Idaho. Specifically, we dealt with endangered sockeye salmon. I was very excited to start because this was very important to me in regard to salmonid recovery. Little did I know the managers were the most horrific, disgusting, and vile human beings I had yet to deal with. They were both males. I'm not talking poorly about males in general at all, but this is relevant to the story. There were countless stories of mismanagement at this place, but I'll stick to this very humorous one. I didn't find out until later, but before I arrived, one of the other temps there had to clean out one of the restrooms from poop spray. As in pressure wash poop spray in the front of the bowl, yes. The manager of the hatchery pooped everywhere and made other people clean it. Great leadership. So on to the story. There are 2 restrooms there in the main office area. For obvious reasons now, the ladies, which there were 3 of us not managers, would very much like to have one of the restrooms designated as the ladies' restroom. The 2 restrooms were literally right next to each other in the hallway, and were exactly the same. This shouldn't be an issue, right? No, the narcissistic manager, who, it was obvious at this point, loved control, said no. There is no reason to have 2 different restrooms. They should be used for everyone equally. So for weeks we sat there, our desks were just down the hall from the restrooms, and watched him use both, here flushing and then immediately he would exit. My point, it was now obvious that in addition to leaving them in disgusting condition, he was not washing his dick beaters after touching everything in there. Also, the other ladies got frustrated, I got frustrated, and then creative. He wanted us all to use the restrooms equally, right? Alright, we will use them equally. Before I will start, I will say that I lived on site and thus opened up the building and got there before everyone else in the morning. Everything was able to be done craftily before dawn. So I went to the nearest town after work one day, a 45-minute drive away, to the Walgreens. I purchased every female-oriented product they had and began my plan. I started small. I put a box of XL Super Heavy Flow tampons in one of the restrooms on the counter. Did the manager budge? He made it a point now to only go in that restroom. Perfect, and creepy and disgusting, but whatever. In the period of the next 2 or 3 weeks, I kept putting a product or 2 in there, after every few days. Slowly and purposefully upping the pressure like a vengeful anaconda. The next was bright red lipstick next to another XL box, but of those adult-sized Super Heavy Flow pads. Did not deter the manager. I upped my game to spraying the most obscene flowery scents in there every morning and leaving the perfume bottles next to the sink. Got nothing except a, "Wow, smells nice in there." Really? Gross. At this point, at least the assistant manager was avoiding the restroom like the plague. Alright, at this point, we have been having fun with this for about 2 weeks or so with minimal results. Time for the squeeze. I took the most obvious bottle of douche I could find and sprayed the contents into the toilet, leaving the empty bottle right on top of the toilet next to the box. That very clearly said douche. Next to that, an open container of flowery Vagisil that had obviously been used recently. That may have been enough, but I also sprinkled some of the tampons all over the sink, after opening a few for max effect. We sat and waited like predators. On cue, upon arriving to work, the manager went to the specific restroom. Anticipation. After about 3 or 4 full seconds, he came out without looking at any of us, shuffled quickly into the other restroom right next to the first one. This was the one we initially proposed as the male bathroom before any of this occurred. I think we were all crying from trying not to laugh, but I don't remember specifics, just the feeling of victory. The manager did not speak to us for at least a week, which was more than we asked for, and didn't look at us for another week or so. And he never went into that restroom again, despite us removing our products and arsenal as they had done their job. It was a smooth and swift finish, and our objectives were met. Two. I work in a high-tech industry, providing network security products to the Fortune 100. Think of Apple, Facebook, Salesforce, etc. My job is as a sales engineer, which is to work with the direct sales rep and make sure that the solution presented is correct, solves the problem, and fits the customer's business needs. The job of the sales rep is to manage the relationship and to guide the sale through the qualification to purchase process. It's not their job to be the engineer on the account, that's my job. The two of us go into the account together and work face-to-face with the customer teams. Often this begins at the C-level, like Chief Technology Officer, and then works its way down to the department team, security team, network team, IT team, procurement, legal, etc. I've been doing this job for a long time, and I'm good at it. I get glowing reviews from my customers because I work really hard to make sure I understand their issues, and to make sure that the technology fits their need. At a prior company, who shall remain nameless, I worked with a handful of really recognizable accounts that I won't name here. I had been at the company for over 4 years, and I was very successful at it. A new sales rep was brought in with the expectation that he would begin with smaller accounts in order to learn the products and get his feet wet with relatively low-risk customers. In the matter of a few months, he went through 2 of my peers who didn't want to work with him anymore. He was making sales, but they weren't happy with him and requested to be moved to a different rep. Normally, I would not work on smaller accounts since I was a senior person in my role, but my boss asked me to work with the guy and see if I could find the problem. Normally, the way a sales call worked is that the rep, we'll call him Mr. Arrogant, would open the meeting, introduce people, propose an agenda for the meeting, provide marketing material if appropriate, and then introduce me so that I could ask the customer about their needs and goals, and then I'd begin to work with them through a technical presentation. That was the way it was supposed to work for all the reps. The really experienced guys could do most of a technical presentation, but anytime the client got down to the nitty-gritty details, they would always turn it over to the engineer. It's the entire reason that we went on the sales calls, to keep the rep out of trouble. It was never the job of the salesperson to do the technical portion of the sale. Never. So Mr. Arrogant and I go off to our first sales call together. As we ride over in his car, we talk about the customer, the kind of business they're in, and possibly what products they might need. This is all pure speculation. We don't know the customer's problem yet, let alone their network or environment. I volunteer that I've worked with this customer in the past and I'm comfortable with their environment, but it might have changed. As we're riding in the car, he says to me,
"Okay, Devamel, I know all I need now. We can go in. Let me do all the talking."
He's been with the company for a month or 2. I tell him gently that it is a bad idea and he should do his job and I'll do mine. He's having absolutely none of that. Mr. Arrogant tells me in completely clear terms that his account is his account, not mine, and he will not let me in the room unless I let him sell. He knows more than I do, and I should sit back and learn from him. I tried gently several times to get him to let me do my job. Absolutely not, so I text my manager while we're sitting in the customer lobby with the description of the situation. My manager texts back something to the effect of, "Mr. Arrogant believes he can do your job. Let him try." So cut to the meeting. Mr. Customer has the head of security, the head of network, and the head of IT all in the conference room. Mr. Arrogant begins his marketing pitch. He doesn't ask any questions. He pivots over into his product pitch, telling them that they need really expensive product 1 and really expensive product 2. Oh, and they need a 3-year support plan and a bunch of custom coding to make it all work. The room is completely silent when he finishes. After a long moment, the chief technical officer turns to me and says something like, "So, Devamel, do you agree with this?" Mr. Arrogant leaps in and says, "Of course he does." I stare at the CTO silently. The CTO says, "I'd like to hear what Devamel has to say. If you like Mr. Arrogant, you can wait outside." Mr. Arrogant shuts up. I say, "Actually, Mr. CTO, I have no idea if your environment has changed, what your technology looks like now, or anything. But I can guarantee you that you absolutely do not need product 1 and 2. You might need product 3 or 4, but I need to learn a lot more about your current situation." Mr. CTO turns to Mr. Arrogant. "Yeah, why don't you wait in the lobby? I don't think you're the right person to handle our account. I'll reach out to your management team this afternoon and see if someone else might be available." Mr. Arrogant sputters and then leaves in a huff. Needless to say, I needed a lift back to the office when the meeting ended. But no one ever had to work with Mr. Arrogant ever again, as far as I know. His desk was empty the very next week. 3. Back in the late 80s through the mid-90s, my dad grew watermelons every year. It's a good cash crop, but intensive on the physical labor side of things. And you're working hardest when the weather is hottest. You have to work really hard to pick the melons when they're ready to pick, as healthy vines will bump out growth on the remaining melons fast in late June, so you can pick again in just a few days. So, only a certain type of person is willing and able to really capitalize on the crop. My dad was just that certain type of person. He was transitioning all of his farming activity from row crops like corn and peanuts and cotton to pecans. He needed that summer cash crop of watermelons to stay afloat until the pecans were paying off. I worked for him at the time, and part of the successful transition from row crops to pecans hinged upon using buried drip irrigation for the pecans. For 6 years, I buried drip irrigation for several months every year. We were able to water groves with $2,000 wells instead of $200,000 wells needed with sprinklers. Big difference. Anyway, we irrigated the melons with drip irrigation too. Only it wasn't durable stuff used on the melons. It was thin, cheap stuff made to last a season and no more. The plastic film covering the beds was 1 mil thick and would photodegrade from sunlight in a year. The drip tape itself did need to be picked up and disposed, so this one year my dad gets the bright idea to burn the film at the end of the season instead of letting it break down slowly. A local AG company has a towable burn rig you can rent. Now this thing is just the sort of rig no one in their right mind would use. I'll describe it, because it was a real monster. Okay, start with a 1,000-gallon propane tank. The huge kind you see in some yards that only have to be filled every couple of years. Now you put that mamba jamba on top of a homemade trailer made to be pulled behind a farm tractor, and you hook up a pump to the top of the tractor so that it can pump the propane, not just let it flow from expansive properties, because you need a lot of propane to flow for this kind of beast. The back of the homemade trailer has a support shaft mounted across it. There are 2 long boom shafts on hinges that fold forward for transport but can be locked perpendicular like wings when deployed. They are 16 feet long each. The trailer is 8 feet across. So when the wings are deployed, this bad boy spans 40 feet. Every 4 feet on all 3 shafts there is a torch. These torches are angled down and backwards. The idea is that a flaming jet of propane would hit every scrap of plastic film and burn it away. We won't even get into the environmental aspects. So this was August, all the melons were done, and cleanup needed to happen. My dad rented this beast, had me hook it up to a tractor, and meet him in one of the fields. There were 2 controls up in the cab with the operator, both toggle switches. One of them was to turn on the gas for pilot lights on the torches. The other was to go full-on burn everything in sight. But it was a windy day, maybe 10 to 15 miles per hour average. I was not comfortable. I voiced my objections to burning on a windy day and got shut down, hard. Told to just do as I was told. Okay then. So I'm sitting up there in the cab following instructions. I get told to turn on the gas for the pilot lights, so I do. And then I sit there for a good 5 to 10 minutes twiddling my thumbs, because it's too damn windy to get to burning stuff. It's too windy to get the torches to light. The breeze is so stiff it is dissipating the gas and blowing out the old man's lighter repeatedly. And I'm just sitting there doing as instructed. After another 50 or 60 failed attempts, my dad, old man, boss, was reaching the end of his patience and yelled at me to not just sit there, turn on the full gas. Now I was annoyed and didn't want to be out there, but this seemed to be a bad idea, so I spoke up. But that will... Shut up, do what I said! But shut up! Either flip that switch or get down here and light up while I flip it. We need more gas to get it to light. I flip the switch. The torch ignites. shoots a jet flame directly into the old man's sandaled feet. Yes, that's right, he was wearing sandals. And he lit a wide-open jet of propane that was aimed directly at those sandaled feet. I let out a loud bray of laughter just as I flipped the switch off. The old man's head swiveled away from his feet to me in a trice, but despite my guffaw, I had a sober and morose expression plastered on. He couldn't wear shoes for a couple of weeks. While he didn't need dressings on his feet, they were pretty well done. We didn't burn any watermelon film that year. 4. My final retail job was at a preppy designer clothing store. When I started working there, we were encouraged to wear the brand to work, although you could also wear plain khakis and a plain polo shirt. Then, after a while, the general manager left. The new GM, a vicious, racist, labor law-ignoring psychopath, announces that we all have to switch to uniforms, khakis or denim only, and a navy blue polo shirt or button-down only. Which would be fine, but the company won't provide them. And the GM from hell waited until 3 days before the deadline to tell us. And at the time, the store was very picked over from a big sale, so there was almost no acceptable stock and all the common sizes in those styles were gone. About 60 employees, mostly part-timers, were frantically scrambling to find acceptable clothes with almost no notice, at our own expense, and nearly all of us had to look elsewhere. This was a particularly nightmarish prospect for me. I'd had my hours slashed repeatedly. In retaliation for reporting a work injury, the GM was later demoted over it, and another manager was fired, but that's another story. I had no money. After rent and food, I had nothing left at the end of the month. And for the first time ever in my life, had to carry a balance on my credit card just to eat. And I could live on almost nothing. And by this point, that balance was maxed out due to car repairs. To make matters worse, my body is a nightmare to fit. Polos hang on me like tents, and button-ups always gap. Even if I could afford to buy the clothes I was now expected to wear, they weren't going to fit me to brand standards, and I would not have time to take them apart and reconstruct them. I went to the managers and explained that I couldn't afford any more clothes. They'd cut my hours. The GM had deliberately interfered with my job search. Like I was going to stay put with her around. My credit card was maxed out and I had no money left. Could I please get some help? Oh, it can be any brand, just no logo. Maybe you didn't hear me. I can't even afford to go to the Goodwill. True. They blew me off again. So you won't help me? Suit yourselves. I called my mom and asked if she had any of the navy blue cotton fabric left over from a long-ago sewing project. I was a fashion design major in art school. I know how to make a shirt that fits me. I'd already done one pair of handmade jeans, since R&R discontinued my preferred cut. The shirt met the required criteria of having a collar and buttons, but I deliberately did not do a great job. And I know how to do a great job. I didn't have time to make a collar mock-up and adjust the pattern for the best drape. Oh well, the collar's just going to sit funny. I only had enough interfacing for the placket and undercollar. Oh well, the collar already sits kind of funny anyway. I didn't have time to turn the collar points out exactly right. Oh well, they just won't quite match, and one of them is going to stick out a bit. I didn't have time to fix some crooked top stitching. Oh well, the thread matches anyway. I didn't have time to sew functional buttonholes. Oh well, the shirt closes with hidden zippers anyway, so it wouldn't gap. I didn't have time or money to go to the fabric store for matching buttons, and use several very similar ones. Oh well, you'd have to have a very sharp eye to notice. The fabric rolled and creased a bit along the hemline in 3 or 4 places. Ah well. I didn't have time to press it, let alone hand-stitch it. The first day the uniform rule was in effect, evil GM got one look at the shirt and her nasty smug smirk evaporated. She was fuming. She couldn't do or say anything about it. After all, it fit the required criteria, and it was the best anyone could reasonably expect it to do with no notice, no money, and no help whatsoever. Sewing is a lot of work, you know. Yes, I got the hell out of there as soon as I could. 5. So this happened back in September of 2006 when I was 16 years old. I was a Girl Scout and our troop leader basically ran the troop like it was a doctoral level university course, and made us, girls aged from 12 to 16, run most of the fundraisers to teach us responsibility. Well, in September, when we were going to be selling steeply discounted magazine subscriptions through the organization as a last-ditch effort to earn money for a trip to London the trip would be going on in April of 2007. I had no intention of participating in the fundraiser, since I knew I wasn't going to be able to sell any magazine subscriptions, nor would I be going on the London trip. However, the leader had other ideas and put me in charge of the fundraiser, meaning I would be responsible for handing out the packets to the 3 girls who weren't at the meeting, and I would have to tally up all the sales at the end of the fundraiser. I immediately protested the decision by our militant leader and told her, I won't be able to run the fundraiser as I have academic obligations on our meeting night for the entire duration of the fundraiser. The leader sneered at me and said, "What academic obligations could you possibly have for the next 5 Friday nights?" I'm in my high school's concert band, and, weather permitting, we're scheduled to play at our school's soccer and or football games. Each of the performances count as a full test grade, and missing just one performance will dock my grade a full letter. She sneered again and told me, "An extracurricular activity like band isn't an academic obligation." But ma'am, for me, concert band is an actual class like math or science, and I get graded for it. And I'm going to be studying music in college, so I don't care, you're still going to run the fundraiser. A few of the other girls offered to run the fundraiser instead, but the leader was adamant that I would be the one running the fundraiser, and she snapped, "No, she needs to step up and take some responsibility for a change, even if she's not coming to London with us." So, cue malicious compliance number 1. I reluctantly agreed to run the fundraiser, and as luck would have it, the weather was perfect and clear for those next 5 Friday nights, so instead of going to my Girl Scout meetings, I was sitting in the stands of my high school's football field, jamming with the rest of the high school band. The night I went back to my Girl Scout meetings was the night I was supposed to turn in all the paperwork for the fundraiser, as it was due the following Monday, and, well, I had nothing to turn in, and my leader was furious with me. In front of everyone, and a few of the parents, she screamed, "Thanks to you, the fundraiser failed!" And I reminded her, "When you put me in charge, I told you I wasn't going to be able to run it because of school obligations, and you still decided to put me in charge. So I did the responsible thing and put my academics before my extracurricular activities. This fundraiser didn't fail because of me, it failed because of you." After that, she looked like she took a bite out of a lemon, handed me her cell phone and said, "Call your mother to come pick you up. You're no longer a member of this troop. I'll change your status to Juliet, a Girl Scout who isn't a member of the troop, when I get home tonight." Before I left, she sarcastically sneered, "Good luck trying to find another troop to join." Cue malicious compliance number 2. After school the following Monday, I called the Girl Scout Council office for my region, and asked if there were any cadet or senior troops in county I lived in, and as it turned out, there was actually one in my hometown. I requested the leader's contact information and called her as soon as I got off the phone with the council office. I explained my situation to her, and if it would be all right if I joined her troop. She said, "Of course!" And she gave me the troop number and troop crest, so that later that week, I went to the Girl Scout Council store to pick up my new troop's insignia, and that Friday night joined my new troop. But it doesn't end there. Before I left that first meeting, my new leaders asked my mother and I if I wanted to join them for a Girl Scout seminar that was going to be held the next morning at a local hotel. I agreed to go, and the leader added, "Just so you know, your last troop leader is going to be there, is that okay? I don't know if you want to see her so soon after what happened." I grinned and said, "Oh, I definitely want to see her." The aftermath that ensued that sunny but chilly Saturday morning was glorious. Once my troop leaders, the other 2 girls from my troop, and I arrived at the venue, we were led to a room where my former troop leader, her daughter, and another girl from my former troop were in. Turns out they were also participating in the open flag ceremony. The look on the leader's face when I entered the room wearing the full insignia of another cadet, senior troop, just a week after she kicked me out of her troop, was priceless. She stiffly said a curt hello, while the other two girls were like, "We're so glad you were able to join a new troop, and none of us blame you for what happened with the fundraiser." And to top it all off, guess who ended up leading the opening flag ceremony because she was the highest ranking girl taking part? Yep, yours truly. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, number 68. Oh dear, we all know what's around the corner, don't we? Well. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I do have a shout out to do. The author of story number 4. There we go. That was the very clever person who stitched their own uniform shirt. I always hate when I hear this. It does happen happens in my country in some places as well. Thankfully not the places I've worked. They would just give you the thing. You know, you didn't have to pay for it. So they weren't exactly generous with giving them out constantly, but you know, they would at least give you your uniform shirt. And you buy your own trousers. Basically, you had to wear black trousers is what you had to wear. That's fine. You know, I had pairs of those anyway, so that was fine. But yeah, it always annoys me when I hear a company's essentially taking advantage of employees by charging them for the uniform. You want me to wear it, you pay for it. I mean, I'd be happy to work in the buff if it means I don't have to pay for it. Anyway, the author of that story was Little Lost Angels. No, it wasn't. Little Lost Angeles. There we go. That's the thing. Thank you very much, Little Lost Angeles, for allowing me to use your story. Sorry it took so long to actually get done. The health reasons, and I'd also like to say thanks to everyone who's been sending me well wishes while I've been sick. I'm very touched that you all care so much, and I'm also very touched that you seem to think I'm so rich I can just take as much time as I want off this. But don't get me wrong, I'm doing all right. I could probably take a few more weeks off if I needed to, but the longer I'm off, the worse it is for the channel in terms of the algorithm. There should be a thunderclap in there at some point. Anyway, so essentially I need to get back so that people are actually, the people who were at least getting notified of my videos, and a lot of you aren't, are getting notified. I really wish they'd fix that issue. I mean, you've got over 70,000 subscribers. It would be nice if over 70,000 people were notified. Not that they're all going to watch every video, but a lot of them don't even know I still upload. Alright, no more grumbles. It's a happy day. We've made a video for the first time in a long time, and we're going to upload it, and it's going to be great. And if there's any mistakes, I'm just going to ignore them and not fix them because I made the video. I'll get back to being anal retentive, fix every problem freezer at another time. Although I think it should be alright. I caught most mistakes as I was editing. Okay, and with that, I'm going to stop rambling and head off for now. There may be a stream at some point this week. I'm not sure when the next video is. I'm not going back to a full week. At most, for the next couple of weeks, we might have a maximum of 3. It'll depend how I'm feeling the day before, but hopefully that's doable. I do already have enough for a spinning plates. And just in point of clarity, what I'm going to be doing as I'm trying to get the channel back up and running after being absent for a while, I'm going to be doing the videos I know perform best. So we will get back to things like paranormal. It might be a couple of weeks before I start doing them though. It's just a matter of I need traction on the channel. Haven't abandoned them, won't be abandoning them. It will be a little while before we do a Glitch Monthly again, because they're a lot of work and I just can't do it right now. But this wasn't bad. Recording this video wasn't bad at all. And so I know at least I can get a video done. I kind of miss doing my marathon recording sessions, but hopefully we'll get there in time. Give it time. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.